All right, good morning. How are we feeling this morning? You're awake? Yeah? Good to see you. If you don't know me, my name is Matt, one of the pastors on staff. It's good to be with you this morning. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us for an hour. And just a couple of quick things before we jump into the message. I want to let you know we have got something exciting coming up here at the Fred campus. On February 9th, they're going to be having a guest speaker. Caleb Coltenbach is going to be coming back to Rocky. And so he was here a couple of years ago. Caleb is a pastor, he's a communicator, he's also an author, and he wrote a book a couple years ago entitled Messy Grace, and we had him here, did such a great job. We want to bring him back, and so he's going to be coming, and if you don't know his story, Caleb essentially grew up in a Christian home, and somewhere along the way, both his parents got divorced, and then both of his parents said that they were homosexuals. And so as a Christian growing up, and he kind of tells that story, and he did such a great job last time, and brought such a great challenge to not just our church, but the Big C Church of how and what does it look like for the church to love people who maybe are living different lifestyles than maybe what we would choose or think a little bit differently. He did such a fantastic job. And unfortunately, it's humbling because he's got some stories on the local church about how the local church treated him and his family. And so he's going to be here. So don't miss out on that, February 9th. And then the Monday right after that, on the 10th, we're going to be hosting essentially like a parent seminar where Caleb's going to be talking on some of the issues kind of in that camp. And so parents, you'll get some more info from our student guys about that, but get that on your calendar. And then that Wednesday, which would be the 12th, if my math is right. Then he's going to be teaching to our students on Wednesday nights. So it's going to be a cool week just having him here. We're excited to be hosting him, but keep that on your calendars coming up on the 9th. If you are new, if you're hanging out with us maybe for the first time or the first time in a long time, again, we're excited that you're here. I want to encourage you after service. We've got a new guest team that is waiting for you. They want to serve you, answer any questions that you may have. And so as you leave the auditorium today, you're going to see a sign on the other side of our lobby that says new guest. And so stop by there, take a minute or two, and they would love to serve you in any way that they can. Then I just want to celebrate an event that we did here this past Sunday. Last Sunday, we had a men's event here at the Fred campus where we were excited to host David Bodie, who is a professional baseball player, plays for the Chicago Cubs, and he came, and so many guys showed up, way more than what we thought. I think we had somewhere around 250 guys here at the Fred campus. And so, ladies, thanks so much for kicking your guys out of the house and getting them here. And we had a great time just interviewing him, and it was a great encouragement. And so I just love to see all the guys together. But you're here this morning, and again, we're glad that you're here. We started a new series 2 weeks ago entitled No Matter What. And so what we're doing in this series, because it's the beginning of the year, is just going over, again, what are the values and non-negotiables of our church, because those are, it's an important topic for us, because here's what we know, that values drive behavior. I've been saying this the last 2 weeks. If you want to know what somebody values, just watch how they behave. And so values are a big deal for any organization, and surely for the local church. And here's our desire for this series, is that it's not just that our church would better understand what our values are, but if you don't know what our values are, then yeah, I'm excited that you're here and you get to hear about them. But we're doing this series because we really want our values to lead us to action. Of all the things that we could do this year as a church in 2020, we want to do the most important things, and our values will lead us to those things. So here's what I believe. A healthy church, if we're going to be a healthy church this year, then we're going to be a church that's willing and wanting to work our values in order to experience some growth. And when I talk about growth, I definitely mean numerically. Yes, I want to be a church that's growing, and we don't want to be a big church to just say that we're a big church. We want to be a church that's growing, because that means we're reaching people in our community with the story of Jesus. But we also want to be growing spiritually. We want to be a church that's becoming more like Jesus. And that's what we've hit the last 2 weeks and some of the content, saying, hey, these rhythms help us as a church to be healthier. They help us to become more like Christ, which ultimately is one of the things in our mission statement, which is to know Jesus and to love like him. But here's what I find, and maybe you can agree with me on this. I find that a lot of times, and I'm talking to me too, that our walk with Jesus is very similar to some of the other areas in our lives. And unfortunately, this is the unfortunate part. Unfortunately, many of us treat the church like we treat other things. For example, exercise. And I know you're sitting there going, not me. Yes, you. Right? Because, listen, I'm just being general here, but most of us, right, when it comes to exercise, and some of you had the New Year's resolution, this is the year that you're going to exercise, you're going to eat better, and you pounded a dozen donuts before you came to church today, all right? And here's the thing, right? Most of us, we just won't consistently get our butts out of bed and get to the gym, and the times we do get to the gym, we barely give any effort to lift anything because it's too heavy. Why is it so heavy? And then we don't listen to the trainer because he doesn't understand how busy we are, and how dare he tell me what I should or shouldn't eat. And yet here's the thing. Some of us, we wonder why we didn't lose any weight or gain any muscle last year, right? We have a bunch of excuses, and we're going to blame a bunch of people. And I've said this before, and the gym is just such a great analogy for our lives. But here's a question for you. When's the last time somebody asked you what gym you go to? Right? And the reason why they're not asking you is because it doesn't look like you go to the gym. Right? We have a desire. We want to get to the gym. We want to see results. If I said, do you want to be healthier this year? I hope you say yes. You want to lose some weight this year? Most of us will say yes. You want to gain some muscle this year? Most of us will say yes. And yet we probably won't do the things that we need to do to accomplish that. For some reason, when we neglect, when we kind of put aside these healthy spiritual habits, and then suddenly certain parts of our lives begin to fall apart, I'm telling you, it's crazy as a pastor to sit down with people and they're stunned. And they start blaming the church, and they start blaming God. And I want to look at them and I go, man, you know what? It's really hard for God to answer prayers when you're not praying. It's really hard to see some of the fruit in your life when you're not doing the rhythms or the exercises that would produce the fruit that God so desperately desires. What we can't do as a church is not do the work but expect the results. And this is why our values are so important, because values drive behavior. And we know that these values work. They've been tried and they've been tested, because 2,000 years ago, the local church that we read about in the book of Acts, man, they valued some things. And they behaved in some ways that not only changed their culture, but has had influence in the world for over 2,000 years. That's why you're here this morning, because a group of people 2,000 years ago valued some things that the world just couldn't resist. It was irresistible to people. It was irresistible to the world, a world that wanted nothing to do with God. And these people lived a certain way, and they behaved a certain way. They did some things. They did some hard work, and we're still benefiting from that. And we want to be a church that gets back to some of those values that literally changed the course of the world. And so here's just a recap. 2 weeks ago, we just said, hey, we want to be a church that's known for our irresistible pursuit. In 2020, we're going to be a church that spends more time with God, not less. We've got to keep first things first. And the first thing for us as a church, and the first thing for followers of Jesus, is this year we're going to spend more time. We never lose when we spend more time with Christ. Encourage you got to get a Bible. You got to spend more time in prayer. And for some of you in the room who maybe are young in your faith, or you just haven't created this rhythm, and it's awkward, and every time you read the Bible it's boring because you're in Leviticus, you don't even know where you are, and you just go, I don't get it, and it's confusing, and it just doesn't make sense. I want to tell you, you just got to keep doing the reps. You keep doing the reps. And there is a day that is coming where it'll begin to shift, and you'll begin to see how God is going to use that rhythm to allow you to experience more of Him and to learn more about Him. But we got to spend more time in 2020, not less. And then last week we just said we want to be a church that's known to be an irresistible community. We're going to be in groups. We're going to do life together. I was at a group launch yesterday over the Niwot campus. So over 190 people in our church over the next 10 weeks have committed to do groups together. And it's just awesome on a Saturday night to be in that room and just tables that are just full of people, and they're jumping in, they're taking the risk. And some of those folks in that room last night are scared to death because I could see their face. They have no idea what they're about to experience. I just encouraged them and said, listen, you're taking a step in the right direction, because listen, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, you have to be in community. There's too many New Testament writers that say if you're a follower of Jesus and not in community, then we're not sure if you're a follower of Jesus. This is the church. We're the bride of Christ, and so we want to be a community that's irresistible to people who are far from God. And so here we are, week 3. And to start us out, this week, what we're going to be talking about, I want to talk about the idea of being a GOAT. Do you know what GOAT stands for? Greatest of all time. That's right, greatest of all time. And there's always these big discussions about, in certain, sports and different kind of things about who is the GOAT. And so we're just going to do a little game here of, and it's your opinion. You get to decide, but there's always usually a discussion in major sports of who is the greatest of all time. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, and you can decide who's the GOAT and then who's not the GOAT. Who's the donkey? Okay, so here we go. So look, So this is one. I remember in college, I did a speech on who was the GOAT of basketball. I actually compared Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, but do you know that LeBron James, he's up there in the top right, he's actually on record, has said in an interview that he is the GOAT. He's the GOAT. I saw the interview. He goes, I'm the GOAT. I'm the greatest of all time. And what's really funny is the next game, he had one of the worst games of his career, okay? But he says he's the GOAT, and yet there's a lot of people. You know the guy in the bottom left? You guys don't even know who that is, do you? You don't know. Yeah, it's Michael Jordan, right? And when I was growing up, he was the GOAT. And for most of us, I would still hold to that. I think Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time when it comes to basketball. Wow. I mean, it's not Jesus. Calm down. Okay, so anyways, so the next one here. So again, this is my sport here. And so the guy in the top right, that's Babe Ruth. All right, that's Babe Ruth. A lot of people consider him, if you Google greatest of all time baseball players, he's probably going to be number 1. But I would tell you this, in my generation, when I was growing up, I think over the last 20 years, Barry Bonds statistically is one of the best baseball players that has ever played the game. Now, somewhere along the way, his head got double the size, and it's just because he drank milk, all right? And so, but there's a really big argument. There's some really even, older players too, like Willie Mays and Lou Gehrig, these really great guys, and, Frank Robinson, all these guys. And so there's discussion about who is the greatest of all time, but I would probably hold to Babe Ruth here. And then, okay, so this is a little more sensitive here because this is real. Okay, greatest of all time. No, come on now. Easy. Okay, fine. I try. No, okay, listen. All right, so you got the guy in the top right. Now, here's the thing. You got, if he was here, he's got a ring for every finger, and so you just got to own that. But then, when I was growing up, too, the idea of the greatest of all time was Joe Montana. Everybody knew Joe Montana, right? He's the greatest. He's the greatest of all time. Maybe this would help you out. I don't know if this makes you feel any better, but, for you homers here, there's Tom Brady, but also when you Google greatest of all time, not just Joe Montana's in the top 5 quarterbacks, but this next quarterback is there too. Actually, he's in there. Yeah, he's in there. But I'll be honest, I think Tom Brady's probably the greatest of all time. Okay, I just think he's got too much bling, all right, to argue with it. He did so much stuff. And then the last one, all right, you can take this narrative into anything, okay? And so, look. So when you're talking about the greatest chicken of all time, okay, in the top right, that's the number 1 at Chick-fil-A. And, that's probably the best. Now, this joker down the corner, all right, it's garbage. All right, that's garbage. That's the Popeye's chicken sandwich, and that came out this year. And as a church, we never dive into politics or things like that or tell you what to vote. I will tell you the best chicken sandwich, okay? And we are pro Chick-fil-A and anti Popeyes here, all right? Come at me. All right, come at me. Here's the thing. We want to be a church that's great. I think that's okay for us. What we're going to see is that Jesus himself, he'll say to us, hey, it's okay for you desire to be great. I think there's something inside of us as a church, even you, to go, man, we want to be great, maybe the greatest of all time. I think there's something in me a little bit, and this is not coming out of any sense of pride, but I love the history of our church. Our church has been around for over 30 years. This campus has been here for over 10 years. And yet I would hope that maybe, let's just say over the next 10 years, are the greatest years of our church. I want us to be the greatest church. I want this church, this generation, the next 10 years maybe to be the GOAT of our church. Like I want people maybe 50 years from now, and I hope 50 years from now we're just doing incredible things. But I hope they could look back and go, man, of all the seasons of our church, that season at that campus, at that church, man, that was a great season, wasn't it? You remember that season? You remember? And people go, yeah, that was so good. What made it so good? Well, there's just something about that church at that season. They really valued these kind of things. When you talk about the GOAT in the context of our culture, I mean, the reason why, those pictures of those folks are up there is because the way that the world defines greatness is usually, the filters they use are, how talented people are or what they've achieved. That's why I talk about Tom Brady. His achievements are pretty hard to argue against. Or we look at wealth. How much stuff do people have or power? It's why a lot of times in our culture, when we talk about the GOAT, we're talking about athletes or movie stars or politicians or people in royalty. And yet here's what I want to talk about this morning. When Jesus talks about the GOAT, he talks about it in a totally different way. Totally different way. Well, it makes sense for us in our culture to look at those folks and we go, yeah, there is an argument of who's the greatest of all time. But when Jesus starts looking for the greatest of all time, he actually flips it upside down. Look what he says. This is Matthew chapter 20. I'm going to start in verse 20. This is one of my favorite stories in the New Testament. If I could pick, one of 5 kind of narratives where I could be present in the New Testament, this would be one of them. I just think this is a cool moment. This happens several times with Jesus and his disciples, but I think it's so profound in the moment. This idea here changed the world. And if we can get this idea now, it'll change us too. Look what it says here, verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. And so we have 2 of the disciples here who asked their mom to go talk to Jesus. Don't do that. Verse 21, here's what it says. What is it you want? Jesus asked, and she said, well, grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. Verse 22, you don't know what you're asking. Jesus said, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? He knows what's coming. He knows the death on the cross is coming. The idea of communion, that you just participate, is what we remember there. Verse 23, Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. Verse 24, when the other 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the 2 brothers, probably not because of what they said, but because they wanted to be the ones who said it first. And Jesus called them together. He calls his guys together, and he says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. And then verse 26, look at this, not so with you. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And when Jesus is saying this, jaws are dropping. Verse 27, whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And so here's the question that these guys are arguing with. They're going, we want to be great. We want to be great. Now listen, Jesus, we know you're the GOAT. We know you're going to be the greatest of all time, and you're going to build your kingdom, and these guys are still thinking it's going to be this like brick, mortar and brick building, this kingdom you're going to build. You're going to be just like Caesar, and you're going to have a huge palace, and you're going to have all this power and authority and influence, and so we know that's where you're going, and so, but we just want a spot. We know you're the GOAT, but we want to be like the second greatest. Could we sit on your left and your right? And and they're kind of talking to each other, like, who's got the best chance to, like, get that done for us. It's like what my kids do when they want something. They'll send the little sister, right? Because I'll say no to the oldest quick, but the little one's a little bit tougher. Dad, it's just hard, okay? And so they always send her as the messenger. This is what these guys do. They send the mom, okay? He'll say no to us, but he can't say no to mom. And so, we'll send mom, and mom goes, and she says, Jesus, listen, if it could happen, I want, my sons to be great, just like you. And they're not going to be the goat, but could they sit to your left and to your right? And just goes, lady, you don't even know what you're asking. You want your sons to be great. And she goes, yeah, we want to be great. And then he leans into the guys. He gets them all together and goes, listen, do you guys want to be great? And they're going, yeah, we want to be great. We want to be just like you. We want to be great. We want to be great. We want to be great. And he goes, okay, now just listen real close. You know how the world defines greatness, right, guys? Oh, yeah, we know, Jesus. That's why we want it. That's why we want to be great, because we want to have power, and we want to have influence, and we want to have all this stuff, and yeah, we get it. And he goes, you know how Caesar up the road? You know how he's great, right? And they go, yeah, we know. You know how people with extreme wealth, they're great? Yeah, we get it. Okay. Not so with you. What? Yeah, not so with you. You want to be great, right? Yeah, we want to be great. Okay. In my kingdom, it's different. In my kingdom, if you want to be great, if you want to be at the top, then you got to be at the bottom. If you want to work your way up, then you got to be okay with working your way down. You want your influence to increase? Yeah. You have to decrease. You want to be a leader? You want to be a leader? Yeah, we want to be a leader. We want to be, yeah. Okay. Well, then you have to be the best servant. And I think there's probably something in these guys that after Jesus gets done talking, they kind of go, well, maybe we don't want to be great. We thought we did, but we thought what came with being great was all of this stuff, and yet you're saying we don't get any of that stuff? Jesus goes, no, not in my kingdom. Not in my kingdom. He sums it all this. If you go back a couple of verses, in verse 16, Jesus says this, so the last will be first. You want to be first? Yeah, we want to be first. And you got to be last. What? Yeah. In my kingdom, it's different than how the world views it. Jesus goes, listen, true greatness isn't found in finding people who you think are great and having them serve you. That's not how this works, guys. We don't get to the top so everybody can serve us. He goes, man, true greatness is found in serving others. That's how it works in my kingdom. So just think about this morning. When you do something for someone, when you serve someone, is there ever something just inside your heart a little bit that wants somebody else to notice? I'll do something nice for you, but I want somebody to see it. Is there something in us that makes us feel good? Is there something inside of you and something inside of me that we want someone to recognize the good things we've done? And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but I'll be vulnerable this morning too. There's times where I'll do something, and yet there's something in my mind that gets a little bit more excited if people see me do what I'm doing. Do you follow? Something in me that goes, man, I want to be great, and I know that when I serve, that's becoming more like Jesus, and yet I still want somebody to see it before I do it. Satan tempted Jesus with this very idea of just being recognized and having power and influence. In fact, one of the temptations that Satan will put in front of Jesus is essentially he says to him, listen, if you want to have power, if you want to be the greatest of all time, I'll give you everything that you could ever want, but all you have to do is acknowledge me and worship me. And essentially Jesus says, no, I'm not going to do that because I already know that God is the GOAT. Can he get any greater than God? But no, but this is one of the temptations that Satan will put in front of Jesus. And again, here this morning, there's nothing wrong with pursuing greatness. I think that's awesome. I think you should pursue greatness, but the difference for Christians is the motivation of being great. And this is what Jesus is digging after in the hearts of his disciples. Why do you want to be great? What's the point of being great, boys? And they're going, we want to be great because we get all this stuff, and then we can tell people what to do, and we have power, and we have influence, and we have resources. And Jesus goes, no, that is the wrong motivation for being great. See, our motivation for serving should always be to notice others, not for others to notice us. Our motivation for serving, our motivation to be great is to notice others who Jesus says, that, listen, you've been called to serve. They've not been called to serve you. You're here to serve them. You want to be great? Yeah, we want to be great. Well, then you've got to serve. For even the Son of Man, who I'm telling you, friends, this morning is the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. You can't even get any greater than him. And if the greatest of all time is saying the way to greatness isn't to acquire wealth or prestige or any of that stuff, he goes, listen, you want to be great like me? And they go, yeah, we want to be great like you. He goes, then you've got to learn how to serve just like me. You think I'm great? Yeah, we think you're great. Well, guess what? I came here not to be served. What? No, I didn't come for that. I came to serve. And to serve at such a level that I'm even willing to give up my life. You boys want to be great? I don't know, Jesus. Seems like your economy and your kingdom's a little upside down. And Jesus goes, exactly. It's the reason why I came. It's the posture that Jesus has. It's the posture the church should be taking. We should be prioritizing the needs of others over our own. If we want to be great, that is the way to get there. Jesus essentially says to his guys, boys, in my kingdom, it's not about you. It's not about you. And if you make this thing about you, then you don't understand the mission of the kingdom. If you make church all about you, then friends, you don't understand church. If you're walking around our building this morning, you're just critiquing and evaluating about what we could do better for you, then you don't get it. And in God's economy, when it comes to your greatness, you are not at the top. You're at the bottom. For even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve. And so I would pose the question, well, how do you do that well? How do you get to deeper levels of service? How do you get that motivation inside of you to not live a life for yourself, but to live a life for others? Well, enter the Apostle Paul. He writes about this a ton. This is just a couple of verses I'll point out. This is Philippians chapter 2, starting in verse 1. He's writing to the church in Philippi who struggle with the same idea that you and I are wrestling with this morning. Here's what he says. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one of mind. Look at this, verse 3. Do nothing. And the word nothing there in the Greek means nothing. All right? Do nothing. I went to Bible school. Do nothing out of what? Selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, there's a different way to do it. You can do it this way, in humility. Humility is the secret. It allows you to value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Think like Jesus thought. When it came to how Jesus lived his life, how did he think? To get more stuff so other people could serve him, or is he here to serve others? You got to think like that guy thought, who being in very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, in other words, he could have. If there's anybody who could ever not want to serve, it could be Jesus, the GOAT, because he is the greatest of all time. And yet, here's what Paul's saying, even the GOAT, even the greatest, made a decision not to live like that. He could have lived his life having other people serve him, but he chose not to. What did he do? Verse 7, he made himself, look at it, nothing. Made himself nothing. By taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, what did he do? Humbled himself. By becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. You know how we get to deeper levels of service? You know how you and I, we get to become the greatest? Humility. Humility. It's the key. C.S. Lewis says that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Humility challenges our motives. It tests why we do what we do. Paul, he goes, listen, if you're going to become more like Jesus and you got to be humble, and the way that you do that is that you make yourself nothing. Nothing. Make ourselves nothing. Not less, nothing. Nothing. We make ourselves nothing. Well, how do you do that? How do you make yourself nothing? I've been thinking about that this week. How do you just make yourself nothing? If you're going to get to deeper levels of humility and serving people, how do you make yourself nothing? And so I saw this illustration. I'm going to show you a little bit. I got another prop this week, guys. Yeah, new year, new me. Okay, so if you weren't here last week, we had a little art class and painting. It was good. And so this week, I saw this analogy, and for me, it just really simplifies it up, and I think it's going to represent the kind of church we want to be. So I'll tell you what everything means here. So I've got this bucket here. This is this just came out of my basement. Nothing profound here, but this is the world, okay? This is the world in this analogy. So I'm going to sit this here. That's the world. And then I got this thing here. This is fun. Okay, so this, you are the cylinder, okay? This is your life. And then inside I've got ping pong balls here, colored ping pong balls, okay? And so this is your life, and this is you. This is, God says for you to be nothing, but this is something, okay? And so this is all of you. This is your life, and this is what I think what Jesus is trying to say is, listen, there's two ways to go about living your life. You can either live your life and trying to hold on to all of your something, all right, which is here, this is your ping pong balls, and this can represent anything you want, all right? So whatever is something to you, this is you. So this is money, time, energy, like for me in the last 2 weeks, my Xbox. Okay, so anyways, this is all stuff here. All right, this is you. This is something. This is what makes you you. All right, so everything that you have this week is represented with one of these ping pong balls. And here's what Jesus is saying. Listen, if you want to be great, then you have to somehow get your something here to be nothing. That's the goal. That's the goal of your life and my life. When we enter into the kingdom of God and His economy, when He looks at you, He will determine your greatness by what you do with your something. And the challenge this morning is, how do we get our something to be nothing? Because when it's nothing, then we can actually identify with the Son of God way better. But when we try to approach Him and act like Him and be like Him with still something, Paul says, no, because Jesus Himself became nothing, even humbled Himself to take the form of a man, and then through humility even gave up His life. We didn't have to, but He chose to. And He was able to do it because He had something. He was the goat, and yet He decided to be nothing. That's what makes the gospel so profound. That's why the story of Easter, just from God's side, doesn't make sense unless you really understand how much God really does love you. So you've got something, but you've got to somehow get this to be nothing. So here's what happens at church. We just got to be honest with ourselves, right? So serving is a big rhythm of any church. It's going to be the big serving of our church. And this year in 2020, I'm telling you, we got to step up our serving. And we've got spots back in the kids ministry, and we need people back there. And Wednesday nights, we've got students that some of you need to be engaged with and start being here on Wednesday nights. And some of you need to be group leaders, and some of you need to be on our host teams, and some of you think you can sing, and so you need to try out and see if you can sing and get up here and do all that. Listen, because it's through serving that we actually become more like Jesus, but you're only going to get there through more humility. And how Jesus defines humility is to get your something into nothing. And so here's what happens. We start kind of leaning into the idea of serving, and so you jump into church, and so I've got these jugs of water here, so you know where I'm going here, but this is water's refreshing, and so I'm just going to consider this to be God, okay? And so what happens is we start letting God mess around with our life a little bit, right? We start letting Him in. And so the pastor gets on stage and he says, you got to serve. If you're not serving somebody somewhere, then you're not as close to Jesus as you think. You go, oh, snap, I want to be like Jesus. And so you receive some of that, right? You receive some of it, and so you allow that to kind of get in there a little bit. And, oh, man, it's so good. Praise God, your hand is up, and you worship, and it's all good, and it feels good, and you come to church, and you're going to jump into a group, and see, something begins to rise there a little bit. Bam. Worked out perfect. All right, so here's what happens. Right? Something in your life just became nothing. Now, I don't know what this was, but, in your life, something, you got to, I'm up here and I'm going to guilt you and shame you. Do you love Jesus? I love Jesus. Yeah, then you should serve with kids. I hate kids, but you should serve with kids, all right? And so you should sign this card and you should go serve. And this one little thing, you're going to give up an extra hour of your week and it pours out and you're like, woo-hoo-hoo, look at me. Look at me. I'm the GOAT. Look at me. All these people every Sunday morning aren't serving anybody, but I decided to go serve. And this one little thing pours out. And listen, friends, if we're not careful, we begin. One more thing has popped out. I just gave $1 too on Sunday. This is great. It just pops out, and I'm just going, look at me. And listen, I'm so excited. These are steps in the right direction to have your something become nothing. But if we stop there, you still have something. And in God's economy, what Jesus says in the context of your service, no. The deepest level of humility is when you become nothing. Nothing. And we walk around and we just go, man, we feel good about ourselves, and we did this and we did that, and it's more than, we've dropped a couple more ping pong balls in the person beside us this morning. Don't look at them, but you're judging your righteousness compared to them. You're going, man, I'm doing a little bit better, and yet you still got a whole lot of something. You still got a whole lot of something. And so, you hear a message like this, and you go, okay, this year I'm going to spend more time with Jesus. I'm going to spend more time with Jesus, not less, because Matt says, listen, we got to value pursuing God above all else. And if I do that, things are going to be able to change in my life. So you're going to spend more time. 6 a.m., you got to get up at 6 a.m. because you're not holy unless you do. And so you're going to get up at 6 a.m. You're going to get more Jesus in you. And all of a sudden, more stuff starts coming up. All of a sudden, you're looking at your neighbors and your coworkers who are far from God. You're like, I didn't even care about you, but for some reason now I care about you. And I want to take you out to lunch, and I want to love you. And you show up at church because you spend more time with Jesus. Just as overflow. You don't rely upon Sunday morning as the end all and be all, but you're here because you love Jesus. You want to be with people. And so you just, woo, you know what I'm saying? Man, Dane can sing. You're just getting into it, and you just keep feeling this overflow, and then for some reason, something happens, and we stop. We stop. It's like for some of you, you start the year out, it's going great. I'm eating clean this year. Everything's going well. But then this past week, your kid got sick. Then your other kid got sick. Then you got sick. Now you're tired, and you don't want to cook. And the McChicken is only $1, and so you get it, and we stall out. We stall out. We did good. We've got something. We got something here, but we also have some nothing, and it went well, but then we get stuck. We get stuck. We stop doing what we were doing in the past that got us some nothing out of our something. We were in groups for a while, but then we got out. We did serve for a while, but then we stopped because those kids drove us crazy and whatever. And so we stopped, and now we just kind of got back into this rhythm of we just go to Sunday every once in a while, and anytime I hear a message about somebody serving somebody, or Matt's up there and we got to serve each other, we're going to be a healthy church, I get it, but I just don't have time, and I don't have the energy, and I don't have the resources. And yet, friends, in God's economy, this is the most important conversation. That you somehow got to get your something to be nothing. This is why 2 weeks ago we talked about the idea of, listen, you got to spend more time with Jesus, not less, because the key to getting to deeper levels of humility, and the key of what you're going to hear next week when it comes to the idea of love, if we're going to be a church that's going to be serving people well, not just each other, but people outside of our walls, and it's more time with Jesus and more time with people who love Jesus, who can encourage us to do what? To spend more time with Jesus. You got to spend more time with Jesus, right? And so because you still got something. You got something left. You're not using it all, and so you just start going, and man, it's just so good, right? And okay. So anyway, you just keep going, right? Because it's summer camp, and you just fell in love with Jesus, and yeah, right. And now all of a sudden, you've got a couple things at the top, but these things get easier to deal with. I'll be honest, I didn't bring another jug out. So anyway. Okay, good. Yeah, that's the idea. Took more water than I thought. So anyways, okay, here's the last thing, and I'm done. Here's the beautiful thing, all right? If this can be an analogy for our church, when you allow your something to be nothing, do you know who gets your something? Everybody else around you. Everybody else around you. You get to walk around life a little bit, and people go, wow, it's like there's just ping pong balls coming out of you. What's going on? You go, yeah, this was my something. This was my something. But I've made a decision in my life to live for nothing. Listen, you know this is true at the end of your life. At the end of your life, people are going to evaluate this narrative right here. People are going to evaluate this narrative right here. Jesus knows you so well. He wants what's so good for you. He's actually thinking about this. I think even the context of what is best for you, and you can frame it up in being the go to grace all the time, but he knows you, and he goes, listen, at the end of your life, you're going to be evaluated on this. If you lived your life for just your something, or if you allowed your something to become nothing. And I'm just telling you, friends, you can't take any of your something with you. And at the end of your life, the people are going to determine what you did with your something. And here's what I know, that when I get to the end of my life, I hope that my life represents more of a clear cylinder than something that is filled with things that I wanted to hold on to. And I want people to get up on this stage or whatever stage, wherever I die, and then they come up here and they go, man, Matt, I'm just telling you what, he just had such a level of humility. He was always giving away his something. He just always seemed to have time. He always made the energy. He always made the effort. He was always willing. I mean, if he saw somebody who needed something, he would do it. If there was a need in the church, he just would say, how can I help? Because he just had this thing about him. And friends, this morning, if you're going to go, man, how do you do that? Here's what Jesus says, humility. When you begin to value others above yourself, when you go, I want to be great, but I know that the way to be great isn't to allow other people to serve me, but it's to serve them, then you are going to live a life at the end of your life, people will go, Dad was great. My mom was great. And the reason why you were great, because you allowed your something to become nothing. If we want our church to reach more people with the gospel, if you want to become more like Christ, if you want this place to be healthier than it is now, if you want to see things change in your marriage, if you want to see things change in any other arena in your life, here's the key. This is what Jesus says. You want to be great in that area, and you go, yeah, we want to be great. We want to be great. And Jesus goes, listen, here's how you can be great. Take your something and be nothing. Allow your something just to be an overflow of what God is doing inside of you, not just on Sunday morning for an hour, but every single day of your life. What would it look like for you to live a life that at the end of your life, somebody would actually say at your funeral, nobody practiced humility better than them. Friends, this year, if we practice irresistible humility like never before, good things happen in your life, good things happen in the context of our church, and good things begin to happen in the lives of people this morning who are still far from God. How many ping pong balls are you going to have at the end of your life? If you want to be great, Jesus says none. Let me pray for you. Father, this morning we thank you for the truth of the gospel, and I pray, even just a silly analogy with water and a cylinder and ping pong balls, yet that it would stick in our minds, that we all have something. And I pray that we'll be a church and that we'll be followers of Jesus that holds on to our something as loose as possible. That we'll be a church, that we'll be followers of Jesus who consistently are walking around at home, at work, at our church gathering, not holding tight to our time, to our resources, to our energy, to our stuff, but a church that has our arms wide open going, how can I help? I got a lot of something. And in order to be great, I want to literally spend my last day on this earth with nothing. So thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to get rid of some of my something. And I just wonder, Father, today, if we could just be honest as a church that we're doing some good things and we've given something. But I don't think we've gotten to a place where we got nothing. And so would you this year, 2020, increase our desire that when we say to become more like you, what we're saying is we want to be more humble like you. We want to serve like you served. Because in your economy, in your kingdom, that's how you become the greatest. So this year, help this church to become a little bit more great. Help us as followers of you to be a little bit more great. That as we spend more time with you, as we jump into deeper levels of community, we allow a little bit more of our something to become nothing. May we be the church, just like the church 2,000 years ago, who wowed the world. That we would wow a community. Not as we brag about what we've accomplished, how many people we have, but we talk about how can we practice more humility for the sake of the kingdom. We want to be great. And if we're going to be first, then we're excited that we get to be last. We thank you, Jesus, this morning for demonstrating for us on our behalf what that looks like. That you even said to your guys, I was great, and I'll be great, because I came not to be served, but to serve. And if you're wondering how far, I'll even go to a cross. Help us this morning to live a life worthy of that kind of gospel. Father, we love you, and we thank you for Jesus, and it's in his name we pray. And the church said, amen.